shit. Family, glad to be back with you. Hope you've been having a fantastic week. We want to make sure everything's working. Um, Yeah, TikTok be giving me the roughest time, family. I don't know what that is. Oh, I forgot I got my do rag on. Hey, it take work to be this handsome. Nah, I'm tripping. Listen, I told y'all I had I ain't think I can get waves with my gray hair. And I was just riding in traffic and I seen a dude with gray hair and the waves was going ham. And ever since I knew it was possible, I went back to my old technique. So glad to have you back. This is Thursday night book club. I already jumped into it. I know we're a little delayed, so forgive me. But it's Thursday night book club. If it's your first time here, it's Soul Swami Live. Thursday night book club is a spinoff of our Tuesday night show that revolves all around all things healing and different ways that we can heal through conversation, energy reading, and learning about new tools. You generally can catch us on Facebook, TikTok. Well, TikTok keep banning me, so I don't know about that. I'm thinking about doing a change, but we on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitch. I'm watching Twitch now. I need to show them more love. Um, and we're here every Tuesday and Thursday, unless I decide to take the day off, which ain't that often, cause I'm grinding. I'm a grinder. We generally start our show off with some bold breathing exercise and the visualization. That generally revolves around our chakras, some energy cleansing. So we do a little. We try to be conscious and thoughtful about it. So the lights is red because we are on our root chakra, our grounding energy point. And the color for that is red. Your root chakra is known for your survival instincts, your stability, your ideas of security and safety, and how connected you feel, how grounded you feel, connected you feel to the people and the universe around you. The color for that is red. So if you're thinking about lights, clothes, foods you eat, think red. If you like stones, they got red jasper. What else we got here? Garnet, bloodstone, obsidian is very good. So you think about either black because it's all encompassing, and you think about red stones for that. Dude, you probably on Facebook, I bet. Let me see. Listen, if it's your first time here, we've gone through so many stages with this with this show and our sound. All right, we live. Yeah, Facebook is way behind. There's a huge delay on that. But we're gonna start with some bowl. Okay, hold on. Doo-doo-doo. Wait a minute. Okay, there is no music playing in the background. I had to check to make sure, cause I definitely got music playing. It's crazy. All right, cool. All right, for our breathing exercise, we've been doing a new one lately, but my spirit is calling for 444. Isn't that it? So for the 444 breathing exercise, all you have to do is relax, focus in on your breathing, and listen to the sound of my voice. I will keep the count and everything for you. So it is, you breathe in for a 4 count, you hold for a 4 count, and you breathe out for a 4 count. And again, like I said, all I need you is just to focus on your breathing and try to clear your mind. Get rid of your stresses, your worries, things like that. On my count of 3, family, we'll start. 1, 2, 3. Breathe in for 4, 2, 3, 4. Hold 4, 2, 3, 4. Release 4, 2, 3, 4. Again, family. Breathe in 4, 2, 3, 4. Hold 4, 2, 3, 4. Release 4, 2, 3, 4. Last time, family. Breathe in 4, 2, 3, 4. Hold 4, 2, 3, 4. And release 4, 2, 3, 4. And for our visualization, we're going to keep it simple. Just imagine yourself standing in your happy place, whether it be at the beach, whether it be a mountain, whether it be a field filled with daisies, whether it be standing in the rain. But just imagine yourself standing there, and with every breath in, you bring in stability, and every breath out, you release instability. And every breath in, you breathe in safety. And every breath out, you release feelings of unsafe. With every breath in, you breathe in grounded and connectedness. You feel full. And every breath out, you release burdens, worries, doubts, and fears. And you just keep breathing in. And with every breath, you feel more connected to your happy place. And you feel more spiritually fulfilled. And you release a lot of worries and concerns, because you are reminding yourself of how great you are and that you are never alone. And while you are still breathing in love, stability, security, grounding, I want you to repeat these affirmations with me. I am safe and secure. I am grounded and centered. I am self-sufficient. I am financially secure. I love being in my body. I am safe and secure. I am grounded and centered. I am self sufficient. I am financially secure. And I love being in my body. All right, family. It's Thursday Night Book Club. We're gonna pick up where we left off. We are on where we at, chapter 29, something like that. Um, I think he's getting used to. Oh yeah, he got a job at a newspaper, and he's finally he went to where they go to. He went to the first company party, and it was a very interesting. What is that? Hey man, I'm not trying to connect you to no speaker. The Ballad of Black Tom. That was a fun book, even though it was short. So yeah, and he was talking about his experience at the first company party. I've been to several. I remember my first company party. It was such an amazing thing. It was really a space where I was like, man, these people are doing things that I would never do. And seeing how much they drink and the behavior, it was just wild. Then I went to the wildest one I went to was probably like I always say it was like Sabado Gigante, and man, they had people breathing fire, a lady swinging from the ceiling on sheets, open bar. It was just a wild night, and this was for a nonprofit, for real, for real. So it wasn't like a celebrity party. It had live auction and silent auction at the same time, which is wild. It had so much stuff going on, which was funny because I don't think we spent a lot of money, but we ain't make that much back, which was wild. So now we are on chapter 29. Clashes. I knew from the get go that the crossover into white mainstream would be very risky. I knew I'd be extremely uncomfortable entering a world that had never welcomed me, but never, not in my wildest nightmares, did I imagine that going inside the system would make me an outsider, uneasy with the folks I knew best. And I know that's right. At first, I worked as a general assignment reporter, which meant that on any given day I could be assigned to cover anything from politics at City Hall to soft feature stories in obscure neighborhoods. My job exposed me to sides of Portsmouth that were once foreign to me. When I was hanging on the block, I couldn't name anybody on the city council or school board. As a reporter, I met them and I learned all their names and most of their political agendas. That's a wild space too. I've met politicians and stuff like that, and it's just funny when you think about what you was doing as a kid. You like, man, I ain't know I'd be out here shaking hands with politicians. That's crazy. So it's weird, but they just people. So, but it is a interesting space to be in. I heard about the decisions that affected the lives of blacks. I passively assumed that they were irrevocable decisions made by faceless, powerful white folks who were out of reach. Now I got to see firsthand how the political process worked and how white citizens stormed City Hall when they wanted to get something done. Blacks in Portsmouth seemed light years away from understanding that process. They seldom organized and went to City Hall, mainly because they doubted it would make a difference. As a result, they were always reacting after the fact, always protesting after some historic black school had been closed or some right infringed upon, all because they hadn't been to City Hall when the deals went down. Subconsciously, I think I bought into the notion that whites promoted among blacks, that the white politicians who ran the city, though there were always a token black on the city council, were born with the knowledge and expertise to do those things. Then, as I began to cover the city I grew up in, it became clear to me that a lot of those white folks were actually dumb as hell. Those were the same people who wanted to bring tourists downtown and whose infinite wisdom led them to build a new jail overlooking the Elizabeth River on prime waterfront property. In college, we were taught that the best journalists were objective, that they cover events while keeping their feelings and views removed from what they see. Most journalists, I believe, started out eager and green and stupid enough to believe that line. Then they quickly learned the exact opposite is true. Journalists have feelings and opinions about everything. In my first year on the job, I ran into a lot of people and situations in the city that offended me and tested my restraint. Like the good white Christian man who called us out to write about the church donating donation of food, clothing, and shelter to help a family of Laotian refugees get settled in America. When I interviewed him, he proudly displayed a house that he and his fellow church members had worked so hard to prepare for foreigners. The house required so much work, he said, because the previous tenants were a trifling family that left the place a filthy mess. And it wasn't black people living in it either. He said, apparently realizing the color of a person he was talking to, he blushed. No harm meant by that. Them microaggressions is funny. Then there was the white pistol-toting landlord whose family owned a lot of low-income property in downtown Portsmouth, which they rented to black folks on welfare. Every month around the time when welfare checks were due, the landlord followed the mailman to the women's houses and cashed their checks on the spot to make sure they didn't spend the money before paying their rent. After cashing these checks, the landlord took out his month's rent, then moved on to the next house. While he worked, an armed backup sat in the van nearby to guard against would-be robbers. When I interviewed the landlord, he said, it's for the women. Convenience. They don't have to go anywhere else to cash the checks. Right. When I was growing up, the Christian dude and the landlord were the kinds of whites that the fellas and I prayed to run across. Now that I found some, I couldn't act on what I felt. They call it professional restraint. I had to swallow hard and hold my peace. Any ex-con or former junkie will tell you that the old homies get real suspicious of a guy who makes an abrupt change from prison gray to suit and tie. Unless they transform into cross-wearing, Bible-thumping witnesses for God, they start thinking that maybe you got a break by snitching to the man on somebody. Street paranoia can be hazardous to your health. And if you're not in a big city where you can fade into the woodwork, it can get seriously claustrophobic. It got that way for me after I started covering trials downtown in Portsmouth Civic Center. When I was growing up, I was always going down there for one trial or another. I knew the Portsmouth Civic Center and its courtrooms front and back, but the instant I received that assignment, I knew it would create hassles for me. My primary job was to write about the newsworthy courtroom cases. It turned out that the most interesting cases were the criminal trials, and of course, many featured cats that I knew, like Jason, a young lion that grew up a few blocks from me, riding around in a new Coupe de Ville, profiling like they all do when they get a piece of change. He openly flaunted his success at slinging dope, so it was no surprise when he was popped and promptly hit with a 10-year bid. Then there was Tony Rome, who'd served time with me at Southampton. He took an 88-year hit on him on a similar beef. 88 years? Man. I had to put the ink on to both of them. And for the first time, I felt paranoid about my line of work. Often, while walking through Portsmouth Court building, I'd run into old friends being led from shackles from one area to another. I tried to avoid them for fear they'd blow my cover among court employees or colleagues who didn't know my story. Then one day, my past nearly caught up with me. I was walking through the building on my way to lunch with a court employee and ran into a group of shackled inmates being led to trial. One guy called Dickie spotted me and shouted, "Hey Nate, how's it going? I heard you were out." I hadn't seen Dickie since I nearly OD'd at his place several years before. I've done several drugs at once, including acid and some herbs soaked in embalming fluid. Suddenly, I felt myself leaving, soaring past the stage of being high, shooting right on through the universe. Everybody abandoned me and left Dickie there to watch me die. Later, when I came to, I was stretched out on Dickie's ragged couch, and he was sitting there praying that I wouldn't OD and bringing the heat down on him. I hadn't seen or talked to Dickie since that night in 1974. I rushed over to him before he could blurt out any of my business, hoping my lunch companion hadn't heard what he'd said before. We chatted quietly a few moments, then he and the rest of the gang were led away. I don't know whether or not the court employee heard Dickie's reference to me being out. He had been distracted by someone else passing through, but that brief encounter reminded me that my life was delicately balanced between two worlds, and that inevitably my past and present would collide. That almost happened in the case of Chili Bear, another guy who had done time with me at Southampton. Bear was standing around, talking near a dumpster in Jeffrey Wilson's public housing project one day when two old heads from Cavalier Manor drove up. Armed to the teeth, they parked the car, got out, and split up along different sides of the streets, angling to get the drop on another dude they'd been tracking down. Seeing the ambush coming, the target drew his piece and ran for cover. A gunfight broke out, with both sides shooting at each other like cowboys in a Western movie. When the shooting ended, Chili Bear lay dead, caught in the crossfire. The case was big news in Portsmouth because Chili Bear had been a popular hood and one of the most heralded high school football linebackers to come out the city. When the trial started, thugs from Cavalier Manor in downtown crowded inside the courtroom to check it out. As I stepped in there to cover the trial, I could feel eyes instantly riveted on me. I knew many of those cats, and I tried to decide, should I go over and sit with them or should I keep a professional distance? I stayed away and sat quietly in the back of the courtroom near the door. During recess, I went into the hallway and interviewed a prosecuting attorney. As we talked, fellas filed out and stood off along the walls, puffing cigarettes, talking, and eyeing us. I imagine how that scene must look to them. Nathan McCall standing in the court building, dressed in a suit and tie, talking to a white man and writing down stuff on a piece of paper. I knew what they were thinking. When you put it that way, it do sound bad. I knew because I would have thought the same thing about someone else if I'd still been hanging with them on the block. I tried to ignore the strange looks, but thinking about it made me feel uneasy. I wanted to go over and say, "Hey man, I ain't working for the law, man. I'm a reporter." But volunteering an explanation would have made the situation look more suspicious than it already did. Besides, I'm not sure they would have understood anyway. In their eyes, newspaper and the police were all the same, all part of that big, amorphous, antagonizing white world called the establishment. And now they viewed me as part of that. Nobody said anything to me, but after Chili Bear's trial, I heard through the wires that some bloods questioned how I gotten out of prison and gotten squared away so fast. I imagine what some of them must have said. How that nigga gonna take a fall, come back, and get a better gig than most black folks who ain't never been locked up? It's hard to ignore talk like that, considering going to one of my bosses to ask to be taken off the beat. But that would have involved revealing things about my personal life that were off limits to them. So I lay low, waiting to see if there would be more serious fallout from my appearance at Chili Bear's trial. There was. I returned home from work one day and found a sealed note pasted to my front door. "Give up some money or I'm going to the man on you." I understood the warped logic that led to that stupid act. Somebody assumed I'd hidden my past to get the job. I'd ignored the note and pushed on. Early in 1982, I ran into an old homie in Cavalier Manor while heading to my mother's house. He looked me up and down. "That's a nice trench coat you got on, Holmes. It makes you look like a lawman." He said it half jokingly, but I got the hint. I got hot around the collar and went off on him. "Fuck you, nigga." He grinned cynically and pushed up the street. That exchange brought my frustrations to a head. Reluctantly, I went to my editor and asked for another assignment. I didn't tell him the real reason. I said something career oriented like, "I'm ready to take on another challenge." But I needed to change deeper than a simple switching assignments. I needed a complete change in scenery. I felt I needed to move to a city where I didn't have to confront my past every day. It was time to leave Portsmouth, and I decided that was what I was going to do. As a reminder of my goal, I posted a sign in big, bold letters on the wall just above my bed. "I'm leaving by the fall, job or no job." It was frightening to think of leaving home. Besides prison, I never lived anywhere else as an adult but Portsmouth. But I told myself I had to go. I had to go. Yeah, that was a short chapter. Chapter 30, Fathers. One of the toughest challenges I faced in trying to get my overall act together was coming to grips with fatherhood. After my new job helped me get on my feet, I was able to do more for Monroe, but I still had trouble relating to him one on one. I suspected the difficulty stemmed from some buried, unresolved issues in my head about my blood father, whom we called JL. I could also tell that in very different ways, two of my brothers, Billy and Dwight, wrestled with those issues themselves. Very interesting wrestle. Although I never acknowledged it, I think that on some level it bugged me that I was an adult and didn't know my old man from Adam. He and my mother divorced when I was less than 2 years old. As the eldest of my mother's three children by JL, Billy was the only one with any memories of our father being in the same household as us. Around 1982, a few years before Billy moved his family to Portsmouth from New York, he started making it points to visit home and track down JL and began establishing a relationship they never had. In fact, it was Billy who first took me to meet my father, whom I hadn't seen in more than 25 years. Talk about a trip. That's a hot bill. I was sitting in the room, beat my sister. And my dad, that shit was wild. That one rated right up there with acid and wacky weed. When we went by his house, JL looked at me, smiled broadly, pushed open the screen door, and greeted us with the heartiness of long-lost friends. "Hey, come on in, come on in." I stepped inside first, followed by Biddy. It felt being weird to be face to face with my old man for the first time in years. Standing in the middle of a modestly furnished living room, I wondered, what now? Was I supposed to hug this guy, shake his hand, or punch him in the face? I extended my hand and said, "How you doing, JL?" "Fine, fine. I'm doing just fine, Nathan. You looking good. Have a seat." We sat down, Billy and me on the couch, and JL in the easy chair. Still smiling, JL said, "So what's been going on?" I said, "Not much." There was an awkward silence. Billy, eyeing the uneasy exchange like a referee in a boxing ring, broke the quiet with a lie. "We're planning to come over this way, so I thought I'd call to see if you were going to be around." "Oh yeah, I just got home from working a little while ago. If you called 15 minutes earlier, you missed me." JL, a longshoresman, started running down the details of his workday, trying, I suspect, to avoid eerie silences. It wasn't easy. We were total strangers, brought together by bloodlines that seemed seriously thin. Yet, he was my father, my old man. It seemed weird that we had so little to say, but what was there for strangers to talk about? Sitting there, I studied every detail about JL, looking for traces of myself. Medium height and fat, he looked nothing like I'd imagined. He had dark brown skin and light brown eyes like mine, but beyond that, he could have been any stranger on the street. When he spoke, a gold crown sparkled in his mouth, an indication, I guess, that he was real hip when he was young. JL was remarried and had a daughter and son, both a few years younger than me. They lived in a two-story frame house just off Tidewater Drive, a main street that runs through the center of Norfolk. Sitting there, I thought about how many times I'd driven past that street over the years with no idea my father was somewhere near. I also thought about the disappointing day, 19 years earlier, when we were supposed to have reunited. Shortly after I moved to Virginia in 1964, JL telephoned my mother and said he wanted to spend time with Billy, Dwight, and me. My mother let him speak with Billy, who was then 13. After he hung up, Billy came running to Dwight and me. He said our daddy promised to pick us up soon and take us downtown to shop for school clothes. He asked me what y'all wanted to buy. Dwight was 11 then, said, I want a leather coat. I was 9. I took my cue from Dwight. I want a leather coat too. In 2 weeks before that visit, we wagged our tongues and bragged to our friends about our planned outing to see our real daddy. To hear us tell it, JL was going to do everything, all the special things that daddies are supposed to do. We had laid eyes on him since I was an infant, but he was going to make up for all those special moments missed. The first teeth pulled, first report card, first unsteady bicycle balance act, and this shopping trip was just the beginning. The days leading up to the visit were torture, like 1,000 nights before Christmas. In that time, I wondered a lot of strange things about my daddy. I'd lie in bed at night and stare up at the ceiling, wondering how he looked, how he talked, and what his life was like. When that day arrived, Mama drove us downtown Portsmouth. JL lived less than 10 miles away in Norfolk. We had to catch the tunnel bus to get there. Mama told us that JL would be waiting for us at the bus stop. And she added, if he's not there, don't leave that corner till he comes. We reached our stop and bolted off the bus and looked around for JL. There was no one there. I had to go to the bathroom. There was a department store set back about 20 feet from the corner. Billy kept watch on the corner while I followed Dwight inside to ask the clerk if we could use the bathroom. She led us to a tiny room, smiled, and closed the door behind us. I yanked my zipper frantically, pulled my drawers to get it out, and the pressure broke. Pee squirted everywhere before I could aim at the commode. Dwight grew impatient. Hurry up, boy. JL might be out there waiting. I quickly stuffed it back in my pants and pulled up the zipper and felt warm drops of pee roll down my leg. We sprinted out the door and ran up to Billy. Did he get here yet? Billy was getting antsy. You don't see him, do you? Half hour passed and JL didn't show. As we waited, my mind raced ahead. There was so much to talk about. I wanted to tell him how smart I was in school. I wanted to tell him about our new house in Cavalier Manor. I wished I had some binoculars. I wanted to be the first one to spot JL, the first one to step up to the car and greet him when he pulled up to the curb. I knew what I was going to say. I was going to walk up to the car and say, Hi, JL, I'm Nathan. An hour passed, and there was still no sign. We stood there looking at passing cars and believing with faith that could move mountains that soon or later our daddy would come. Whenever a car came in our direction, I'd lean over and look inside. Most of the folks driving by were white people. I spotted a black man driving a car that was coming our way. As he slowed the car, my heart pounded and my face brightened. I took a step forward and waved to make sure he saw us. The man turned the corner near us and drove by. When the wait grew longer, doubt began to set in. Nobody said it. The silence revealed it. As time passed, nobody said much of anything. We just stood there watching, waiting, hoping. After 2 hours had passed, it started raining. Without consulting Dwight and me, Billy walked slowly to the payphone near the department store and dialed our home. In the half hour it took for our mother to get there, I kept my fingers crossed, hoping JL would beat her to that corner. Every time a car pulled near us to the curb, my heart leaped. And every time one drove away without my brothers and me in it, my spirit sank. Finally, my mother came into view, and we all dragged reluctantly to the car. We rode home in deathly silence. I stared out the window, wondered if we had waited longer for my daddy. I wondered if maybe he might get there moments after we left and found us gone. I wondered if he had a flat tire or something and couldn't get us. I wondered a lot of things. My mother and stepfather didn't explain to us then or later what happened to JL. One night I overheard them talking about it in hushed tones, but that was it. My brother and I didn't talk among ourselves about the letdown. In fact, the only person who said anything about it afterward was me. One day out of the clear blue, I told my mother, I ain't never going nowhere to wait for him again. But I never had to confront such a choice. I never saw or heard from JL again until I went with Billy to see him that day in 1982. Wow. I'd often wonder how my brothers had and I had been influenced by JL's aloofness. Billy seemed most affected in a desperate yet positive way. It was as if he used JL as a model for the type of father he didn't want to become. Billy was devoted to his three children, and he seemed determined to make sure they knew their wayward grandfather too. But it seemed just the opposite for Dwight, who'd been married briefly to us and had a son. Dwight seemed wholly unable to relate to the fatherhood trip. He'd go for months without seeing his son, who lived with his mother in Cavalier Manor, less than a mile from Dwight's apartment. He was almost as indifferent to his son as JL had been with us. I think I was a frustrated combination of Billy and Dwight. There were so many unresolved issues haunting me. There were the two girls who had told me when we were teenagers that they were pregnant by me. Although I doubted that was so, I never resolved it with medical tests. After getting out of prison, I contacted the women to try to settle the matter, but gave up quickly. I suspect it was because I was scared to face the fact that it might reveal and require of me. I was aware of the major contradiction. I believed that I courageously confronted life, yet I shrank from fatherhood, one of life's greatest challenges. Then there was Monroe. He was certainly my child, yet I struggled to feel the bond that I thought fathers were supposed to feel with their children. At times, I looked at him and felt no more connected to him than a stranger. I wondered, had all those efforts on the streets to harden my heart taken their toll, or had JL passed along to me some fucked up cold-hearted gene? I fought to shed the warped values that had guided me before prison, probably the same ones my father had embraced when he was young. To us, children were double-edged swords, to be flaunted and dodged at the same time. They confirmed our manhood, yet threatened to rob us of what precious little freedom we thought we had. Your options are narrowed greatly with crumb snatchers in tow. You got to play by the establishment's rules to keep your children clothed and fed. You got to work and therefore subject yourself to the white man. Children like love make you feel vulnerable to the world. And what black man wants to be more vulnerable than he already is? Interesting way to think about it. Not a justification. Interesting way to think about it. My struggle to connect with Monroe. No, let me see something. Okay, cool. My struggle to connect with Monroe brought to mind a time when I was in Norfolk jail and had begun studying the Bible. One of the street ministers who visited the jail told a bunch of inmates that we would need to get the Holy Ghost and speak in tongues in order to confirm our salvation. For a time, I closed my eyes tight and strained like hell, trying to convince myself to speak in tongues so that I could be saved. Eventually, it dawned on me that salvation is less about what you feel than what you know. Then I relaxed, resting assured that I was saved. At first, I strained hard with Monroe, hoping that the paternal bond would kick in. I went to his elementary school occasionally to check on him and picked him up from his grandmother some weekends so that we could spend time with. While I busied myself around the apartment, he'd leaf through my record play albums and play songs he liked. That's when we discovered we had something in common, a love for music. We played records and talk about which recording artists we liked the best. Over time, he warmed to me. We established a rapport as I gradually learned how to relate to him. Then I relaxed, resting assured in what I knew, that I loved that little 9 year old and that if he tried hard enough, I could make critical difference in his life. Then the growth of our bond was suddenly stunned. Liz got married, moved to California, and made plans to send for Monroe. He didn't want to go, and I didn't want him to leave. Yet, I knew I had no right or authority to raise objections to Liz, who had been far more responsible than I'd been in caring for him. Whenever I tried to inject my views, she sharply reminded me, "You haven't been around for him." I backed off every time. I didn't see Monroe the day he left. I felt too strange and fragile inside to see him off. My mother took pictures of him standing near his luggage before his flight to LA. I looked at the photos later and saw the sadness in his face. It was a sullen, almost pleading look. I was saddened too. Just when we were getting to know each other, he was gone, and I was left to battle the ghost that seemed to be haunting me. Distressing images of uncaring black fathers and the memory of my own detached old man who fed such stereotypes. A lot of those memories raced through my head while sitting there in JL's living room. As Billy looked on quietly, JL asked me questions about my life. "Where do you work? Where do you live?" I answered in a monotone that made the exchange seem more like a formal interview. I wanted to ask a few questions myself, such as, "Where the hell have you been?" But I didn't. If he didn't offer an explanation, why ask? Anyway, it seemed not to matter much anymore. I didn't need him now. I'd survived the period where I needed him most. I suppose I felt hurt by his absence, but I figured I'd come to grips with that while in prison. I concluded that blood is not always thicker than water, and that fatherhood is not determined by bloodlines alone. Fatherhood is a state of mind. In that respect, Bonnie Alvin, the man who raised me, was my father. Jay and I talked on, straining to keep the conversation flowing. Then I left with Billy, feeling somewhat better that another missing piece in my life had been supplied. I visited JL on my own a few times after that. We got along well, better in fact than he and my other brothers did. He seemed suspicious of them because they had each borrowed money from him and failed to repay it. Unlike them, I never asked him for anything. For some reason, probably stubborn pride, I wanted always to be able to say I made it through life without any help from him. During one visit, we sat on the porch and talked dreamily about things we wanted to do in life. I told him I would like to do some simple things that I'd missed out on while growing up in the streets. Maybe go camping or fishing. He sat up and looked at me like, "You want to go fishing? I go fishing all the time." It amazed me that this guy assumed we could form an ongoing relationship after all these years without him offering an explanation to bridge the gap. He seemed completely unaware that people need to know where they sprang from and who they're connected to. In all these years his three sons had lived in the next city, it never occurred to him that we needed to see him and our potential grandparents in order to complete the picture of who we were. Because of him, my brother and I never laid eyes on JL mother and father, who lived a few hours drive away in North Carolina. That's more. JL had never seen Monroe, my son, and it seemed not to bother him. Pitiful, I thought, just pitiful. Child, what you think? He left his own son for years, so that stuff ain't gonna move him. He don't think like that. hard, but sometimes you gotta meet people where they at. When I left his house that day, he called out and climbed into the what? He called out as I climbed in the car. Call me when you get ready to go fishing. I thought, call him? Call him? The few times in my life I seen this man is when I called or visited him. No, I won't call him. He needs to call me. Yeah, that doesn't work. I decided then that I would never see JL again unless he initiated the visit. I'd wait and let him figure out that that was what he needed to do, initiate. That was in 1982. I haven't seen or spoken to him since that day. Exactly. Exactly. That man was not. Doo, doo. We start chapter 31. Chapter 31, dating. After the divorce from Yvette, I freelanced for a while on the romantic tip. But once again, my past complicated the present, making the dating experience more different than it had ever been. I could no longer hang in with the streetest sisters I'd once run with. And besides Yvette, I had no experience dealing with women who were part of the new professional world I'd gone into. I figured I'd need to meet someone who was both streetwise and professional, and who could understand my attempt to deal with three conflicting worlds among whites, working class blacks, and the bourgeoisie Negroes, and help me master this crazy high wire act. Finding such a person seemed hard, if not impossible. Most sisters I ran across were either streetwise and shallow or professional and sheltered. Like Rita, I met her at a party. She was fine as May wine and mucho fun. She liked music and dance and brought me much needed relief from the stilted white world where I worked. But Rita, a department store sales clerk, was too superficial and contented for me. As long as she had a decent job, some nice clothes, and a relationship, she was good to go. But she had no sense of her potential to grow and expand. As far as I could tell, she'd reached the main goal in life when she graduated from high school. As for her future, the only thing that Rita seemed sure about was her weekend plans. She was in touch with only her most basic feelings and guided by super surface appetites. Naeem Akbar would say that she was still locked in that baby stage. Rita and I hung for a while, but I kept her far away from my professional life. I couldn't risk taking her to company functions. She talked about shopping sprees and hairstyles, manicures and clothes sales. She'd get eaten alive in a social setting with my white colleagues who love to talk about politics and current events. That's why you gotta get one to be quiet. I tried that too. I tried sharing books and ideas with Rita to ignite a mental spark, but often all I got in return was empty stares and this compliment: "You think too much." The encounter with her and one or two other down home girls convinced me that I had to branch out, to check out some black professional women to see what's happening there. They were nice and far more stimulating than reading, but they posed problems for me in other ways. Many were solidly middle class women who led sheltered lives. It was hard for us to relate, especially on issues such as crime, politics, and the system. A date with one woman ended when she told me she firmly believed in capital punishment. Another said she routinely had background checks done on guys she dated to see if they had criminal records. I got a good laugh out of that one before laying her out. I feel you. I respect your boundaries, but if you do that, don't tell me. The professional women were perfect companions for company affairs, but they got on my nerves when we were all alone. I met one, Marie, while covering trials. She was doing an internship in preparation for a law degree. She was ambitious and smart, but she seemed to have No heartfelt convictions driving her. She talked about her career all the time, like that was all there was to life. People like her convinced me more of how thoroughly brainwashed some blacks were. And another thing, she liked to hang around white folks all the time, as if she thought that conferred some special status on her. She'd insist we dress up on weekends and go to fancy restaurants where she could order steak and sip cocktails among moneyed whites. After I peeped where she was coming from, it took me no time to pass on her. My dealings with professional women weren't all bad. Some days were fabulous nights right out of prison dreams. And I learned through them that the dating scene among black professionals was far more complex than it used to be. So I can tell you that. I realized that many black women were depressed, child, and them careers be having them depressed. But you can't tell them because it's functional depression, and they've attached that shit to ideas and responsibilities. But man, that shit is one of the truest, excuse my language, one of the truest lines. Them jobs be depressing the shit out of them. That's why they always shopping and spending money. Man, who called me from Waxhaw? My sound ain't messed up, is it, family? Let's make sure. Okay, cool. I heard the echo. Yeah, but that's a cold line. But I promise you, child, man, listen, don't get me on that topic. Functional depression is serious in our community. I realized that many black women were depressed. I'd known all along that we brothers were depressed, but I'd been unaware of black women's depression, maybe because it manifests itself more quietly. But I detected in many ways, boy, especially in the angst and the utter frustration in their voices when they talk about black men. They're depressed partly because they see what's happening to us and they feel helpless, unable to stop it. Then they see us giving up, giving in, canceling one another out, and they know that it canceled them too, because they're whatever bound to us. They're depressed because they aren't nearly enough eligible and sane black men to go around, and that critical shortage is making them desperate and driving them crazy, as nutty as fruitcakes, just like us. Yeah, he bought into that stereotype too, thinking it ain't enough to go around. So they bought into that stereotype, and it is, but it is enough to go around. For real, for real. The thing about it is, it's hard to get them when now you nutty as a fruitcake because you don't think it's enough. Funny how that cycle completes itself. At the start of the 80s, I began hearing a lot of the so-called shortages. In the 80s, they was crazy with that. Oh my God. They swore we was only in jail. The so-called shortage of available black men. I didn't believe it was true until I went into the white mainstream. Then I saw there were a lot of single sisters in the professional ranks, and they seemed hard pressed to find a healthy, marriageable black dudes on their level to hook up with. The math was simple. After they subtracted those brothers who were locked away, gay, strung out, unemployed, or plain fucked up in the head from trying to cope in white America, black women often found the picking slimmer than slim. Whether real or perceived, the so-called black man shortage started changing both men and women's outlooks on things. One lady friend told me her father was convinced that she and her younger sisters would unable in their lifetime to find eligible black men, that he prepare them early for the prospects of living alone. See, look how parents like, listen, you done gave them this hopeless ass thing. You're gonna be alone for the rest of your life. What's wrong with you, father? Of course, a lot of brothers took their endangered species status as an indication that they hadn't made it. Some, those who didn't know any better, got the big head when they found themselves in such a great demand. One buddy used to say that being a single black professional man was like being a child in a candy store. I used to tell these young dudes in my career, like, boy, it ain't no candy store. That is an illusion. But I saw definite drawbacks, yep, to the mismatched numbers. It screwed up the natural flow and dynamics of dating and fostered a sad, almost desperate urgency among a lot of professional sisters. Sometimes I found dates steering conversations to talk about commitment long before they knew whether I was worth being committed to. One woman told me shortly after we met, I don't care what problems you have, drugs, alcohol, whatever, I'm willing to work with you. That's crazy. Another woman whose corporation job took her to a new, mostly white city urged me to come along and promised that a company would find me a newspaper job in her town or somewhere nearby. Sometime I got the impression during dates that I was being sized up, interviewed, and fitted for a bow tie and cummerbund. Often I felt such aggressiveness towards me had less to do with distinctive qualities I might have than with what I symbolize. I've seen that too. They were searching for a buppy, a single black heterosexual man with a job, a white collar job. A lot of sisters claimed they weren't class conscious in that way and insisted they take a working class brother if his head's on right. But my experiences, especially later when I moved to a larger city, led me to believe that in many cases that claim wasn't entirely true. I saw how they bum rushed the white collar cats in Armani suits. It was so obvious that a lot of sisters were hung up on guys who fit the white collar image that working class brothers got hip and figured out ways to pull the okie doke. My barber, a dude named Clarence, told me once that he regularly got business cards printed with his name over them over some made up executive title to impress the honeys who worked the happy hour crowds. Them gold digging bras got go for every time. And don't let me meet some broad that's looking for work. I'll tell them I'm the director of personnel. I'll tell them, baby, I just hired a girl a few weeks ago, but I don't think she's going to work out. So if you give me your number, I'll call you when I let her go. Man, can't get rid of them then. That was fun. See, that's why they wasn't believing me. But I say that to people and actually give them jobs, though. That's what's funny. Because dudes out here like, yeah, I'm going to give you a job. I'm like, well, you want to go out to eat? Child, I don't want no chicken. Oh, God. That was fine if you were up to all that line. That's too much line. And fronting and carrying on. But if you weren't, the pressures were brought on by the mad rush for a successful mate made even casual dating seem like a high stakes, uptight affair. It made me a little paranoid. And it was the same with a lot of other single black guys I knew. Often when sisters try to speed up the pace of a relationship, we assume they heard biological clocks ticking in their head, while we heard time bombs ready to go off. That's funny. It's funny. I don't know how I talk about dating now. Family, I think we'll wrap up there. I think we had a good week. Oh man, it's 4th of July tomorrow. I hope you had a fantastic 4th of July, family. I hope you do everything I would do and more. And shoot some fireworks. Enjoy the time with your family. Put some stuff on the grill. Hope to see you next Tuesday. I think we're going to be, I'm still on that quantum shift. I think that really aligned with what we were talking about. So we might talk a little bit about that. If we don't see you next Tuesday, hope to see you here again next Thursday as we continue reading. Excuse me. Makes Me Wanna Holla by Nathan McCall. I appreciate your support. I appreciate your time. Much gratitude, family. Peace.